I want to begin by paying special tribute to Peace Action. I have been always sympathetic to Peace Action over the years, but that sympathy has grown a great deal in recent years because of the absolute necessity of keeping peace and justice issues at the forefront of our discussions on all of policy in this country. So it's a special honor to be with Massachusetts Peace Action. And also I would note with people from around the country who are engaged with Peace Action. I noted in the chat all sorts of folks who've signed in, and I'm just delighted that you're with us. I want to pay special tribute to Cole. Cole Harrison is somebody who always emphasizes his role as a member of a team, not a leader. That's an incredible leadership skill, frankly. And one of the things that Cole does is make all of us feel very welcome in the movements that he works with and advances. So proud to be with him. Also want to pay a quick tribute to, or a quick note to my fellow panelists who are just terrific speakers and thinkers on these issues. And a special shout out to Bill Fletcher, who has taught me so much over the years about the linkages between economic and social and racial justice and peace, and always kept this at the forefront of his work. And so I'm honored to be on with him. I'm also want to note up front, and it'll frame some of my remarks today, that this week, the Quincy Institute honored Congresswoman Barbara Lee with its first honorable statecraft award. And it's a new honor that goes out to people who have worked in the areas of peace and justice. And I note that because in her remarks in accepting the award, Barbara Lee noted, obviously, that she's perhaps best known for casting the single vote against the 2001 authorization of the use of force that was developed after the 9/11 attacks. And one of the things that she noted is, of course, that authorization of the use of military force has been used 41 times in 19 different countries since 2001. 41 times in 19 different countries. And this is the expansiveness of the war power, if you will, not the War Power Act, but the war power itself and militarism in our governance. And Lee has reminded us that this struggle goes on. The authorization of use of force remains on the books. She has battled successfully to get it off the books as regards the House of Representatives. She got the House of Representatives to vote in 2018 and 2019 for the end of that AUMF, but it was stopped in the Republican-controlled United States Senate. And this is one of the reasons why today I'll focus a lot on electoral politics and on the fight for control of these chambers. It's not because electoral politics is the most important thing, not by any measure. All of our politics matters, including the grassroots, people-oriented politics as regards organizing, and also as regards taking issues to the streets. We can't, just focus on one type of activism. But I will talk a lot about electoral politics because as regards peace and justice issues, we have to do a number of interventions in very short order because we're in a challenging situation. So where do we stand? First off, as Cole noted, and I thought Cole's introduction was incredibly useful, Donald Trump has been defeated overwhelmingly. And that's an important thing to understand. Our media in this country does not do a good job of covering politics as regards where the people of the country are at. It does a very good job of covering the structural politics as they're seen by the folks in DC. And so we focus a lot on the Electoral College. We lose sight of the fact that if we were like most countries around the world, what would matter is the popular vote. And Joe Biden's popular vote victory over Donald Trump was huge. And it grows with the long, slow count around the country. Biden's victory is now 7 million votes. He has a 7 million popular vote lead over Donald Trump. That gives him, well over 51% of the vote. There's scattering, obviously, to third-party candidates and others. What that means is that Joe Biden has received a higher percentage of the vote than Harry Truman in 1948, Dwight Eisenhower in 1952, John Kennedy in 1960, Richard Nixon in 1968, Jimmy Carter in 1976, Ronald Reagan in 1980, Bill Clinton in 1992 and 1996, George W. Bush in 2000 and 2004, Barack Obama in 2012, and of course, Donald Trump in both 2016 and 2020. I emphasize that because Biden comes with a sufficient mandate. Personally, he has that mandate. And notably, the mandate is put into context of taking out a sitting president. Biden has received the highest percentage of the vote of any challenger to a sitting president since Franklin Roosevelt defeated defeated Herbert Hoover in 1932. Again, the highest percentage of the vote for any challenger to a sitting president since Franklin Roosevelt defeated Herbert Hoover in 1932. So this is a significant reality, and yet it will not be reflected in governance. It will not be reflected in part because of Biden's own caution. He has not shown a history, at least in the past, and frankly, even in recent weeks, of fully claiming a mandate and talking about that mandate in the context that you might associate it with bold action. Cole did a very good job of expressing some of the concerns about a centrist and cautious presidency, and I think we have to maintain that concern. There will be tremendous pressure on Biden to govern in a sort of bipartisan coalition model. Of course, that's great if it works, but it's important to understand that that often doesn't work. And seizing the bully pulpit and talking about the fact that the American people actually chose you to make change is vital. I'll talk about that a little in a moment. But I also have to emphasize that the 2020 election did not produce a universal victory. As Cole noted, in down ballot races, Democrats didn't do that well. They did not take the United States Senate. Right now, Republicans hold 50 Senate seats, and Democrats hold, and their two independent caucus members hold 48 seats. That races in Georgia, two runoff elections, a unique situation in Georgia, will determine who controls the Senate. And even if the Democrats take control of the Senate, they will do so with only a 50-50 split that Kamala Harris, the new vice president of the United States, would tip toward the Democrats as the president of the Senate. And that's important because having control of the Senate does not open up the door for all sorts of radical change or bold gestures. In fact, I think I'll talk in a moment about the constraints on that, but it does remove procedural barriers to voting on and considering particular issues. One of the best examples of this, again, and that's why I started out mentioning Barbara Lee, is that Barbara Lee got the House to vote to overturn the AUMF. The Senate just knocked it out, didn't even consider. And when you get a procedural control of the Senate, you begin to open up doors for votes on those issues. And remember, there is bipartisan support for overturning the AUMF. It's just that Mitch McConnell, Senate leadership, and other key players have been barriers to that. So the Senate, lack of control of the Senate is a very big deal. Now, with the reality of where we're at in Congress, I do want to point out that there are some really important victories for progressives as regards the 2020 election. And I want to note especially the vital importance of primary challenges and primary contests. This is something that matters a lot. And we have seen, when I spoke to you in 2018, we spoke about many of the new folks who had come up and won primaries in that cycle. And of course, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in New York was a prime example of that. But also you saw critical primary victories by Rashida Tlaib, by Ilhan Omar, and by Ayanna Pressley. That's where you got the squad. It was out of contested primaries, in many cases defeating sitting Democratic incumbents, who were not always terrible players, but who were not activists and were not focused on peace and justice issues. This cycle, we saw even more of that. The victories of Cori Bush in Missouri, of Jamal Bowman in New York, an especially critical victory because he was running against the chair of a key committee, and the victory of Marie Newman in Illinois are just 3 examples of new people who have been elected to Congress via the primary route, coming in obviously with November victories. All of them made not just economic and social and racial justice central to their campaign themes, they also spoke about peace and about dialing down militarism. And so we see a rising generation of candidates, a lot of newcomers coming to Congress who are deeply committed to economic, social, and racial justice and peace. And that's a big deal because that gives Barbara Lee, Ro Khanna, Mark Pocan, and others who have been leaders in the current House, allies, and people who will actually push them to do more. And so we've seen some major progress in that regard. The House Democratic Caucus is a more pro-peace caucus than it was in the last Congress. It's just that it is a smaller caucus. There's less room for movement, at least in the view of some in leadership. And so it's going to become very important to focus on coalition building that recognizes the possibility on particularly issues of dialing down military spending and on the vital work of overturning the AUMFs, of getting not just all the Democrats you can together, and again, a better Democratic caucus, but also bringing some Republicans in. Now, I want to talk about a few bits of kind of work to do, and then I'll close off. I know we have a very short amount of time, close off with a bit of good news. So the work we have to do is, first and foremost, we have to be focused on the reality of the Georgia runoffs. The Georgia runoffs matter a great deal. One of the candidates there, Reverend Raphael Warnock, has a long history of peace activism. And again, also a tremendous history on economic and social and racial justice issues. Raphael Warnock's candidacy is one that deserves special note. He'll be debating tomorrow night with his opponent, Kelly Loeffler. I encourage people to pay attention to it. This is an incredibly important race, but the other race is also important. Jonathan Ossoff challenging incumbent David Perdue. If the Democrats win these races, of course, as I noted, they get an opening to have a governing position as regards the Senate, to have that control of the Senate. This is a hugely big deal for all of the issues we talked about. But it's not the end of the day. It's also important to note that Kamala Harris will be leaving her California Senate seat in relatively short order. When she does so, Governor Gavin Newsom will appoint a new senator from California. I encourage people who are committed to peace and dialing down militarism to be conscious of that appointment and to recognize that Governor Newsom has the ability to appoint a peace senator, someone who is committed to all of the goals on economic and social and racial justice, but also committed to advancing the agenda of dialing down the military budget, overturning AUMFs, et cetera. And why I mention that is that 2 people who are under consideration right now are Barbara Lee. Her name has been on the list of potential candidates for that Senate seat, and Ro Khanna, who's been a close ally of Barbara Lee and worked on a number
Hi, John,
of these.
you have 1 minute left. Thank
Absolutely. You. And so I think that that's really vital. Now, the last minute, just a bit of good news. And the good news is that Barbara Lee and Mark Pocan have formed a caucus to cut the military budget. This is a significant development in the U.S. House of Representatives, and one that has real potential. Be conscious of that. And finally, be conscious of the ongoing fight within the Democratic Party to advance a different vision as regards foreign policy. And hopefully in the questions, we'll talk a little more about that. I really want to pay tribute to the fact that Senator Bernie Sanders, in his campaign, went out of his way to emphasize the need for a new approach to foreign policy and a new approach to military spending that cut military spending with an eye toward moving the money toward human needs. And with that, I thank you so much for having me and for having this conference.
you so much, John.